How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar-winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar-winning films that we've all seen. You know, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic. I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of 2 guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the 3 people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I'm your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me today is River Lane.
Yo.
And Justin Frankley.
Bermuda, Bahama, come on pretty mama, Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go Jamaica off the Florida Keys?
Okay, I literally have in my notes, I'm reading this aloud. Time this episode to how long it takes someone to make a Kokomo reference. 30, no, you get into it in seconds, Justin.
Incredible! This is what this friendship is about, baby!
And we are here today to talk about Key Largo, the 1948 film that won Best Supporting Actress at the 21st Academy Awards. That, as I put it at the end of the last episode, it's the Humphrey Bogart and John Huston movie. No, not that one. No, not that one either. No, not that one either.
Closer.
It actually came out the same year as one of the more famous ones, Treasure of Sierra Madre, which probably did not help it.
Probably not. Though, like, I think on a pure scale, Bogart was in like what 5 movies a year at one point.
I have his like Wikipedia entry open right now, and yeah, from like 37 on, he was doing like a half dozen movies a year minimum. Insane, man.
Man did not know when to stop.
He's just one of those actors where he was on the studio and they're like, oh, hey, Bogart, can you like walk onto set for like 5 minutes? Cool, you're in this movie now. We'll put you on the poster.
I mean, he was the dude had a something.
The dude had a vibe.
This pod is pro Humphrey Bogart. I don't know if that's a hot take anymore. Is it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. That's good.
I will say this movie finally made me understand the appeal of him from like a thirst standpoint.
That's because he was covered in sweat. It's a sweaty movie.
It's not even this. It wasn't even the sweat. It is the sheer. Never say anything. First of all, we love old-fashioned costuming in this here podcast. We also love when old-fashioned costuming is just men in good suits, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that scene where he's dragging the boat in at the beginning, right before the natives show up. Which, oh boy.
We'll talk about the natives. They're not in the movie much, but are they ever in the movie?
Yeah, they sure are a shadow that hangs over this movie. But it's the scene with him and the shirt rolled up to the elbows, pulling the boat in, and I'm like, I get it now. All right, proceed.
Well, I'm not super into men, but I am theoretically into men. But during that scene, Lauren Bacall looks at him with an emotion that can only be described as lust in her heart.
Yeah, Yeah, well, okay, first of all, let me iron out my bi credentials here. Lauren Bacall is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my life.
She really is.
Second only to certain shots in Casablanca where they use the softest filter on the camera for Ingrid Bergman, in which she is the prettiest woman I have ever seen in my life. Every time I look at Lauren Bacall, I am like, why am I not under her right now? I have low dommy mommy tendencies. As Ellie can attest.
I can, yes.
But yeah, that one, she skyrockets it. And the smartest thing that the dub of Howl's Moving Castle ever did was make her a Witch of the Waste.
I was simply going to say that, like, okay, first off, it is being driven home yet again that you and I have very different tastes in women, River. It's like, yeah, she's really hot in this movie. She's no Gina Gershon in Bound.
I haven't seen Bound yet, Ellie.
You haven't seen Bound? God.
One of these days you'll tie me to a chair and make me do it. We haven't gotten there yet.
Bound you to a chair?
Don't make me hit you.
I don't know. Justin, what do you think of Lauren Bacall? You be our third voice in the hotness of Lauren. To be clear, I do think she's extremely beautiful in this movie.
Well, like every other leading lady in the 40s, of course they're attractive.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where I'm just generically distracted in a lot of this film because it's a very, how to describe it? It feels like a very comfort zone film. It's like the second I put it on, I'm like, yes, this is 40s filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have about 30 seconds of them outside and then immediately onto a fucking soundstage, and I'm like, there we are.
I did say, like, I was looking. We didn't get a chance to like look too deep into this film because we're not really doing research here, or at least I'm not doing research here. But I did find out looking into it, it's based on a stage play.
It is very stage play.
It is extraordinarily. I like single building movies. I just referenced Bound, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. All but like one scene of that movie takes place across 2 apartments. But this feels very stagey in a lot of ways.
And what's funny about it being based off a stage play is it's one of the many Hollywood films where they're like, hey, here's this stage play. Let's take the title and make something else unrelated.
I literally, when I was watching this movie, I was picturing how it would be written as a play in my head, counting actor entrances and counting the scene changes.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, all right, here's where the scene break is. Here's the obvious character having to come in and set something up. Like, there's one scene where the actor playing Johnny has to turn a light on. And I'm just like, yeah, man, that's what you do on stage. So someone forgot to flip a switch before, coming off. So
I mean, it's very. I don't like. I like Chekhov's gun as a rule. It is extremely blatant about its Chekhov's gun moments. It is very. You mentioned it's 40s filmmaking, and one thing they were really good at in the 40s, even good, bad, or mediocre, is they were very good at juggling audience knowledge. That's not necessarily always a good thing. The law of conservation of characters exists for a reason.
Yeah.
But it is very. It always makes sure you know where everyone is in relationship to everyone else.
There's also this movie has it less than most 40s movies, but with the law of conservation of characters, you sometimes have to play the game of shit, which white guy is this? This movie has it less because they all have kitschy nicknames, but it took me until the end of the movie to learn what the third henchman's name was.
Angel?
Yeah!
Yeah, me too. I was like, who the fuck is he?
Because you're too distracted that one of them is literally named Toots.
They also all dress very different. All the characters dress extremely different. Obviously, Mr. Potter is very distinctive because he's in a wheelchair and also he's Mr. Potter.
Yeah, very distinctly disgruntled Southern vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Frank is clearly wearing the only articles of clothing he owns, but he has to keep them in decent condition.
Yep.
The main mobster guy looks like a bass that walks like a man.
I think it is Toots who looks very refined all the time in a way that I kind of vibed with.
He looks like what would happen if you took one of the animated weasels from Who Framed Roger Rabbit and turned them into a man.
That is a good description. That's an A+ description. 10 out of 10, no notes.
One of the things that have survived cultural osmosis involving this film is that the majority of the mobsters in this film are like the archetypical goon. Like every single person who is a mobster in this film is like the archetypical goon. You have the stupid one, you have the fat one, you have the
I do love that the stupid one and the guy who's good with the knife is the same guy.
Mm-hmm. I like the. I suppose I should mention that like the premise of this film audience is Humphrey Bogart is a soldier who comes back to visit like another member of his unit, like his family after that member of his unit died, and like they wind up trapped in a hotel during a hurricane with a bunch of mobsters who I'm like trying to think of how to describe their plan. I don't know if I ever really clocked it. Is it counterfeit money?
It's counterfeit money by way of the Cuban mob out of Miami, and they need to temporarily dip to Cuba because the guy is currently was extradited out of the country when he was originally arrested.
So is he supposed to be? Is he supposed to be Cuban?
No, he's supposed to be. I think so. The actor I think is Romanian.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be like northern. He's supposed to be like Al Capone style mob. So he's probably supposed to be like Italian.
well, they're out of Milwaukee.
Yeah, Milwaukee, like Great Lakes region mobster.
God, I could never. No offense to the city of Milwaukee, which I'm sure is a lovely place. I could never take a mobster from Milwaukee seriously.
Truly, but yeah, no. The gimmick is that he's not supposed to be in the country, which is why they've got to get him back out to Cuba as fast as possible so the cops don't see him.
Yeah, my read of the scenario was that he was in Cuba and he's returning to the States just long enough to make this exchange of counterfeit money, and then he's getting the fuck out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That is the description that I sort of like. If I was pressed, I was going to come up with, but it was just like it's very unclear for a lot of the film, and it doesn't actually matter over much.
Yeah. Though I did make the joke at the end when you finally reveal that it's all about, like, it's the counterfeit money. I'm like, all of this for counterfeit money? I was hoping for at least cocaine.
I was hoping to be like diamonds or something, or like maybe a Pulp Fiction style you never find out.
Yeah, at least it's not as bad as The Big Sleep, which is literally about a pornography blackmail ring, but because of the Hays Code, we can't say any word in that sentence. So the plot is nigh incomprehensible without knowledge of the source material.
Well, that is one benefit. This film would be post-Hays Code, even though you only see, I don't know, a thimble full of blood on a guy's forehead, I think.
Something like that, yeah. Everyone gets shot in highly unrealistic manners.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. Like I couldn't tell until he said that he needed medical attention when he's on the boat having the confrontation with the guys. Until he's killed all of them and says, "I need medical attention" over the radio. I'm like, oh, was he actually shot? He did not act like it.
Yeah, I think the most unbelievable is trying to shoot Rocco at the end of the movie, because where the fuck was he shot? You couldn't head cap him. You couldn't, like, the angle was so bad that your best bet was shooting him in, like, the top of the shoulder, and then maybe when he twisted in a certain way, you'd get, like, part of the gut. There's no way that man is dead!
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't. Okay, so cards on the table. I did enjoy this film. I don't know if I'd like say, yeah, you got to go out and see it right now. I probably never would have watched it without this pod, which is kind of the point of the pod, I guess. Overall,
It's a movie I understand my dad owning.
But like, I really liked the final confrontation on the boat. I like him climbing up there to hide, which I thought was pretty fun and smart.
Yeah. I like the door creak as the inexplicable, like, nobody knows where the other one is.
Mm-hmm. And I liked it. Like, one of the things I liked about this movie, if I had to like nail down the things that I liked, and I will nail down the things that I liked as well as the things that I didn't, is that there's very little violence from Humphrey Bogart's character Frank. He mostly just sort of like gets inside Rocco's head, and just by talking, I like the final scene where he's just sitting there silently as his like ultimate example of just getting inside Rocco's head.
Yeah. The man is like, basically it's the equivalent of like that pretentious teacher who thinks they know all, and the kid at the back of the class going, "Hey, but have you considered fuck you?" But like the classy version of that. I did summarize this movie as a cop, an ex-soldier, a mob boss, his girl, his underlings, and the owners of the hotel get locked in a room.
The cook, the thief, his wife, her lover.
Yeah, basically.
The thing about the longer the ending kept going, it was just funny how much like more ground Rocco was ceding.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of like, yeah, see, I'll give you half. Okay, not half. I'll just give you the whole bag of money. And he just like he talks himself into a murderous rage.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, so Rocco is not a particularly complicated character, but he's also a very believable kind of character in that I think one of the best writing tricks the movie does is they like basically show how much his henchmen have gotten used to, like, okay, he's gonna do something real fucking stupid. We basically have to talk him out of it without him knowing that we're talking him out of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's a decent villain for a very kind of lightweight movie. I mean, like I keep talking smack about this movie that it's like it's lightweight or whatever. It's an hour and 40 minutes. It's fine.
It's the perfect sort of movie where if like you're doing a noir festival, it's a good like middle movie between the heavyweights if you want like an example of the genre that doesn't carry the cultural baggage of something like The Maltese Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the thing about like a lot of noir movies is all of them sort of carry, like the big ones that everyone's heard of, carry this ethos and carry this like weight, because there aren't really like when we make noir movies we kind of have to call them neo-noirs because we really don't make true noir movies anymore. So the ones that have stood up are carrying all this cultural baggage and cultural weight, and sometimes you just want to watch a good example of the genre, you know?
So like noir as a more than any other genre. Like you look at the other genres that sort of came and went. Like spaghetti western's a really good example, or maybe what's the name of those giallo films in Italy?
Yeah.
Those were like intentional genres. People were intentionally doing a specific thing. But one of the things that sort of struck me when I was learning about noirs in film school is that they weren't actually like people intentionally riffing on each other. It was just a bunch of confluence of different kinds of stories that kind of got smacked together under a genre name that we called noir in hindsight. So like you're right that we don't make traditional noirs because now that we have a word for it, you can't really like you can't really just sort of do it live. You're basically doing, if you try to do it live, you end up sounding like that one Calvin and Hobbes character. I don't remember the name, Tracer or something.
Yeah, that good handful of panels. Yeah, my actual favorite noir joke is in the DC's Young Justice run from 1998, and it ends up being Impulse Bart Allen being the detective, and the tomboy character ends up his secretary, and she just screams, and she's like, "Why am I in a skirt?" And it's the funniest fucking panel.
It's Tracer Bullet, in case you're wondering, and honestly, I think those are really good noir parodies because they get the genre.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I think of noir, I always think of the archetypical or the popular segment from Prairie Home Companion, the Guy Noir Private Eye sections. Just the opening is a very good encapsulation of the genre as it exists in the zeitgeist.
Mm-hmm. But you're right; it would make a very good. I don't want to call it filler because, like, I hate that term, especially for a full movie. But it would make a very good like middle. You know, you've seen noir at its best. Here is noir, just classic, just a really good director doing a really solid, if not exactly remarkable, example of the genre.
Yeah, I will say there is one remarkable shot in this movie, and it is the tracking shot as Curly, I think, is trying to explain their cover story to Frank, who clearly does not give a shit.
That I noticed that shot too. Yeah,
that tracking shot of them going from like Frank's room across the hall and then down the semi-curled stairs into the lobby it's a good tracking shot when we weren't quite doing tracking shots yet.
I mean, like, part of what makes it good is, like, it's a good tracking shot, and you're right, they weren't really doing, like, the Goodfellas 10 minutes into the hallway kind of deal yet, but I like it because it's it gives us an idea of Curly, who is just, like, spilling their entire prepared backstory to someone who is not interested in hearing about, like, I'm not investigating you, man, you don't gotta tell me this shit.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny just like how much of a hard time they're giving this guy in the start of the film. He's just like, it's like he's they're tripping him up at like every obstacle, and he's like, guys, I'm here for like 10 minutes tops.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave me alone.
It's incredible how much trouble these mobsters get themselves in purely off of, like, we gotta give people trouble. Like, man, 90% of the time people just do not give a shit.
Yeah, something about does that mean that Bogart just like radiates cop vibes, or does he radiate like instigator vibes?
He radiates instigator vibes because I'm trying to think of an instance where he does play a cop.
Does that mean that that like a majority of Bogart characters in Columbo would get along?
Yes.
Now I want to see that movie.
I can't. Okay, he played a cop in something called Crime School. What the fuck is this?
I like we mentioned before recording, like, or when we mentioned that, like, you know, this man was in like 5 movies a year at one point. He had to have played a cop at least once. It's just the nature of the industry.
This movie is from 1938, and he was in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movies in 38.
Yeah, so
Christ, Humphrey, take a break. I guess you're doing it now.
Maybe just one of those things where like just like his energy, just as you were saying earlier, like Bogart has a sort of like resting, deeply depressed face. It just he just looks so tired all the time, and they're just kind of like, you know, here's a guy to fuck with.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, that's sort of like, if I had to sum up all of Humphrey Bogart's best movies, and this is not going to make your top 5 Bogarts anytime soon, but like all of his best movies, Humphrey Bogart would like to go about his business, and people will not let him.
Humphrey Bogart would just like to pay rent, please. And people keep making that complicated.
Like the closest comparison plot wise I can give to the start of this is like it's the inverse of the start of Rambo, where Rambo's just going to this town to see a guy for like maybe 10-30 minutes tops, and then he's gonna fucking leave, and then like everyone in this town just starts like doing anything they can to give him a hard time,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there long enough for it to become a problem.
I am always entertained by movies where, like, the villain gets everything fucked up because they just could not leave well enough alone.
Truly.
I think that's how Jackie Chan movies usually go too.
One of the things I kept an eye out for, because again, it was somewhat short last minute, but the only thing I knew about the film going in was that it was the Oscar that it won was for Best Supporting Actress.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole time I was watching their name isn't coming to me right now.
It is Claire Trevor.
Yes.
Won the Oscar.
Yeah, the whole time I was watching Claire Trevor, I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I don't have any issue with this, but why did it win? And then we get to the scene that I have to assume is what put it over the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's when she was like a lounge singer, and the bass fish, or Rocco like compels her to sing, and the song she sings off the top of her head is how much of a piece of shit he is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I haven't seen the other films. I've seen clips of the Hamlet that I guess also was nominated,
Mm-hmm.
but like, it was a good performance at that point, certainly.
It's a very, like, 40s kind of performance.
Mm-hmm.
She's playing an alcoholic, which is, I don't want to be mean to the Academy Awards, except yes, I do.
That is literally the point of this podcast, Ellie.
So I'm gonna be mean to the Academy Awards, but I feel like
They have an obsession with alcoholic women.
they have an obsession with alcoholic women, but also, like, a couple of years ago, I'm not even gonna, like, name an example. I figure I can just say this and people know what I mean.
the Academy tends to like movies that have the most acting, not necessarily the best acting, if that makes sense.
This is very much a stage performance.
Yeah, and like this is definitely a movie that gave her the opportunity to do the most acting, especially in Yes That Scene, which is the only scene in the film that has its own like subheading on the Wikipedia entry.
Yeah, because apparently that is the 40 making movies in the 40 was incredibly bad for everyone involved. The director pulled that on her literally last minute. So she was fucking petrified the entire time
Mm-hmm.
because directors do be dicks.
And I did also quite like, I will admit, from her performance, the scene at the end where she like has a freak out at Rocco begging him to take her with her when they leave as a ploy to grab his gun.
Yeah.
Like that's something. That's a thing.
That is one of my literally I have a note from later in the movie where it's like I love this like women's solidarity moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically the minute she walks into frame and sees Nora crying, she's like ready to kill Frank on sight. She's like, "You fucking did this!" Like she is solidarity forever, and I love this for her.
I like Dawn just fine as a character. I very much liked the bit at the beginning where she's like talking about the horse races, which leads to Frank introducing himself like he was a horse.
Yeah.
That was pretty cute. I have a lot of like no, like this is a movie that really required very heavy note taking, so a lot of my notes are just like things that amused me. Like the comment from earlier in the movie, I mentioned it's a sweaty movie. It emphasizes how hot the Florida Keys are, and I like the bit at the beginning where Mr. Potter is like talking about like, well, you know, the temperature in November goes down to 100, and for 3 months the Keys are downright livable.
I deeply liked the text crawl at the beginning of the movie for those of you who failed US geography.
Yes, yeah, I have my notes. Like they just need a note. Like, guys, here's what the keys are. Okay, we good? Okay, moving on.
I found the scroll somewhat helpful because it reminded me that Hawaiian statehood hadn't happened yet.
Mm. Yeah, it hadn't. You're right.
Yeah.
Or Alaskan.
I also deeply appreciated everyone not understanding how the weather works. Nobody knows how hurricanes work.
You know what? I do find it completely realistic. Having grown up someplace that had extreme weather, obviously extreme weather in the other direction, but like one of the things that I discovered living in a place which has extreme weather and which had a lot of tourists is like you can say to a tourist, "Yeah, man, there's a blizzard coming," and you got to go home, and they will assume like, "Oh, it'll be like a little bit of snow, you know, an inch or two." I'm like, "No, man, we're in Anchorage. A blizzard means we measure our snow in feet. You're gonna die out here." So like you can tell these people who are from like Milwaukee, yeah, there's a hurricane coming. They'll be like, ah, it's a little wind, it's fine.
Yeah. To the point where by like the end of near the end of the movie, the hurricane is downright like a ghost. And the way they talk about this storm is the way you talk about like a ghost in a gothic story. Which led to me thinking the hilarious thought of tropical gothic. Is that anything?
That's something. I can see it. But you can argue that it's like deep Southern Gothic in that case.
Yeah, but like Southern Gothic has so many ties to the complicated relationship of rich white people and the slaves, and this
Mm.
movie has a deep weird relationship with white people and the Native Americans. Yeah.
Okay, so like being as generous as I possibly can, which maybe I shouldn't, but I am, I could argue that the natives are like humanized and that like leaving them out in the hurricane is a fucked up thing for the gangsters to do to these people.
Correct.
On the other hand, man, they don't gotta be quite so deferential to the white dude.
I think my bigger problem is like this is the 40s. I would have excused them not being here. The fact that you included them feels a little off.
It's a little weird.
I mean, you say that, but this is also the second film I've been on where just inexplicably George Bailey is like, all the Indian people or all the Seminole people are like, yeah, he's like really cool. Mr. Potter is like, yeah, well, they just really like me. It's like in the piano, we're just inexplicably
Not Sam Neill, Dustin Hoffman.
no, the other person, Keitel.
Harvey Keitel, yes, not Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, just inexplicably, Harvey Keitel has like this deep-rooted relationship with the
Maori.
With the Maui people, and just apparently when Mr. Potter's and fucking with George Bailey, he just goes down to Florida and makes friends with Seminole.
It is increasingly one of the real problems with Lionel Barrymore is that like his performance as Mr. Potter is so iconic, and he never doesn't sound like Mr. Potter. He sounds like him all the goddamn time.
It is the correct vibe for elderly Southern dude. Truly the funniest shit. I did try to watch this movie. I didn't immediately have subtitles turned on, and then I got like halfway through like one of his scenes, and I realized that like the Southern accent plus the 40s acting, I'm just like, no, my brain cannot process this fast enough. Give me the subtitles. Save me subtitles. I can't hear without my subtitles.
Mood. Largest possible mood, River. I will say that this is the second episode where I'm just sitting there watching, like, hey, it's Mr. Potter. Him being a random hotel owner in southern Florida makes a lot more sense to me than him being a judge in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Shout out. Honestly, probably still the worst movie we've covered. No, not the worst movie. The least movie we've covered. Lady Be Good. Green Book still takes worst.
Truly. But yeah, by the end of the singing scene, I was like, everyone should just IDES this guy. Just everyone gets a shot or a stab. Choose how you want to murder this man. Everyone should get a hit in at this point.
Tomorrow is the Ides of March, and they gotta et tu Brute this guy. The Ides of March as we are recording this. Obviously not in 2.5 weeks or whatever.
Yeah. I think we should all just get together and stab this guy.
I mean, that's sort of like your sign that it's a good villain. By the end of the movie, we're like, we should just fucking murder Rocco.
Yeah. What's the fucking meme where it's like, Frank, I think we're gonna have to kill this guy.
Darn.
Also, let Lauren Bacall throw a punch. I understand wanting to spit in his face. Just let Lauren Bacall throw a punch.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do like the two like main confrontations, or the two main bits when they try to resist when he's like still like largely in charge, or at least he's still like exuding that he has authority. Like the standoff where he throws them a gun, and he's like, well, you can take a shot at me, but I'll kill you first.
Flying chick in a hotel room, yes.
And then obviously the scene where he makes his girlfriend, I guess. Yeah, when he makes like Carol sing for him.
Mm-hmm.
When he makes Carol sing for him, and he does it by suggesting that he'll let her drink if she does, and then because she upsets her, he withholds it. And Humphrey Bogart, who in the film is like, he keeps the earlier scene with the standoff is trying to show that he doesn't want to risk his life over this, but like he still feels this like impulse to do what should be right because it's just the kind of guy he is, I guess. And so he gets the drink for the character's name is Gay, and after he does that, he Rocco like slaps the shit out of him, and he ignores it just because to provoke him would be suicide.
To be clear, audience, Justin is not saying that the character's name is homosexual in nature. It's literally gay.
It was the 40s. The word had a different meaning then.
No, but the funniest thing about the chicken in a hotel room, as I came to call it, is essentially at one point the line is delivered, it's better to be a live coward than a dead hero, which I quite frankly, of the 3 Bogart films I have seen, which are, reminder, Big Sleep, this, and Casablanca, that's just the ethos of almost every Bogart character I have seen. Is if Humphrey Bogart wants to pay rent and people keep preventing him from doing so, then the reason he keeps letting it happen is because he keeps wanting to be a live coward, and he's just like, No. Unfortunately, someone has to be the good guy around here, and I'll do it, but I'm gonna complain about it the whole goddamn time.
I mean, like taking a character who clearly cares, but wants to put up a front of disaffection and out for themselves ness, and bringing them to the point where they are a hero and a member of the team is an extremely straightforward and indeed quite good character arc to send someone on. It's what they put Han Solo through in the first Star Wars movie. Like it works. It works every time because we always want to see like the shitty dude make good.
Yeah. Sometimes we want to see the shitty dude make good a little too much, at the expense of all other plots. But here it's fine.
Here it's fine. I mean, like again, like it's a very lightweight movie. There's not really much else going on. I like that he does like they don't suggest earlier. Like there's this bit where Lauren Bacall basically says like, "Oh, you didn't play the like shoot him and he'll shoot you game with him because you knew the gun was empty. You could feel it." And he's like, "No, I just didn't want to get shot."
Yeah. And like, there's also another funny line where they're mentioning, like, when the storm gets really bad, and they mention about, like, the worst storm they've ever had here, which was apparently based off a real hurricane they had in 35. Rocco has this whole freak out about, like, no, you're lying to us. No one would live here after something like that. And I just went, LOL and LMAO, and then immediately went, sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman.
Sucking Aquaman.
Does H. Bomber Guy know how much does H. Bomber Guy know how much of a vocal stim that is for me?
Being the 40s film that it is, something I do appreciate about the film is it just like every character in this is just a catty bitch. Like Mr. Potter has several lines in this where he's just like insulting Rocco to his face. Bogart is insulting him to his face. He's just as God intended. Like
as God intended.
Like the whole reason why the hurricane is treated as a ghost story is that Mr. Potter's sitting there and he's just kind of like, yes, and 800 men were pulled to their deaths. And like he's playing it up, and Bogart's in the background and just kind of like, yeah, what are you going to do against the hurricane, Rock? Are you going to shoot it?
I did quite like we were mentioning the tracking shot. The other shot that like made it into my notes is I really like the shot of him like standing alone in the room, like basically trying to find a way to threaten the hurricane and then just like yelling at everyone to talk about nothing so that he won't feel like so scared.
Yeah.
Like that's good shit. That is good shit from the director, John Huston, who has a name that makes me feel like I should be either be calling him John Huston or John Hudson. And B, I think he was probably pretty good at making movies, if I'm being for real.
Well, he only made like 1,000 of them.
Truly. Sometimes when you make 1,000 movies, at least 2 of them have got to be good.
I mean, like, what's weird is that, like, he made so many movies, y'all. He made so many fucking movies. But, like, all of the ones that I actually like are right at the beginning. Like, I like The Maltese Falcon. I like The Treasure of Sierra Madre. I like The African Queen.
I was going to turn The Maltese Falcon into this movie's inevitable double feature when I watched it yesterday, and then watched, like, a couple of clips of it and said, no, I don't have the mental faculty to keep track of which white guy I'm supposed to care about, and or everyone's shifting motivations in this noir movie, whether I have to try and figure out if I do need to care about what crimes are being committed, because I need to be able to track if we can actually talk about the damn crimes. So instead I watched It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which is no less convoluted, but at least a little bit sillier about it.
And it involves money.
Mm-hmm. And it does involve money. Is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World a film noir? Discuss.
I think Culpepper thinks he's in a noir, and everybody else is in a completely different genre depending on the scene partner.
We actually probably shouldn't talk too much about It's a Mad, 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 Mad World because it is eligible for this podcast.
Correct.
Best sound effects. I'd forgotten that. No, my point was going to be that, like, one of John Huston's last movies, and this blows my mind every time I'm reminded of it, was Annie, the 1982 film adaptation of the musical Annie.
Damn it, I should have started with Tomorrow.
That man was ancient.
He was ancient at that point. He was, 82, so let's look at when he was born.
That's just the oldest man in cinema.
He was 76 when he directed Annie. Although, to be fair, our poor Martin Scorsese is what, like 70-something at this point? He's 82 years old. Marty,
Older or younger than
God love you.
Kubrick when he died?
I don't actually remember how old Kubrick was when he died.
Like he hasn't, like his death is prophesized but not yet happened.
He was only 70 years old when he kicked it, Kubrick.
Wild
Shit. We are very off topic. I don't remember where I was going with that, other than the guy who directed The Maltese Falcon also directed Annie.
One bit of info I was able to look into, given the short notice, is that John Huston made a documentary film called The Battle of San Pietro, something like that. And that is the battle referenced by Bogart when he's talking about the gallantry of his war buddy who died.
Yeah.
I deeply appreciate the father-in-law being like, get me a son-in-law part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have adopted this woman as my own. He is just like really like gutted for that son-in-law part 2, and I'm like, that is the funniest thing on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I was happy that they reiterated a few times their relationship, because the first few times they were talking, I'm like, okay, so is this her father-in-law, or is this her actual father? Like, is this a brother-sister thing? Is this?
It's so, like, I'm not gonna lie to all of you. The timeline on Lauren Bacall's character doesn't super line up. Like, she met him on a USO tour, but then he joined the army, is something they say. I'm like, excuse me? Do you wanna take another pass at that, John?
But it also deeply doesn't matter.
That was gonna be my point, but also I don't care. Who gives a shit? The point is, she was married to his army buddy, who like was a hero. I think they actually kind of imply that Humphrey Bogart was the hero, but like, I don't know. That never goes anywhere.
I think it's supposed to be the continuation of the instinct of, like, when your head says one thing but your heart's been saying another thing your whole life, your head's gonna inevitably lose.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just another iteration of like that idea of the fact that, like, he wants to so desperately just go about his merry way and not get involved in shit and not be an instigator, but unfortunately,
He's got resting instigator face.
resting instigator instincts, truly.
What's funny about it is, like, he keeps like pretending like he doesn't want to get involved with Rocco doing all of his shit, but then like every 30 seconds he has to start needling Rocco.
Again, it's the kid in the back of the class being like, actually consider this, you suck. Or like, I wrote you a song. You're a bitch. Like, that's the energy.
I do think, like, the actor playing Rocco, I know he was in other films where he was the like generic mobster man.
Yeah.
But he just so perfectly captures the generic mobster man. It's almost spellbinding just how much of the cliche is based off of this one person.
He is like the equivalent of a stock character of the mobster.
Mm-hmm.
But like we have the concept of stock characters because Commedia dell'arte, whatever. Which, God, I am still a theater kid third, all things considered. But that's my point of reference.
You pretentious fuck, I love you.
But like, I'm gonna blame Brian David Gilbert for that one. But no, like, the idea is like, when genres get established, you end up with these stock characters. And I think, like, when you got one guy building the template so very well, sometimes, like, you just call him back.
Mm-hmm. It's honestly like we're talking about Humphrey Bogart, how he did 6 movies a year at one point. It's because they're like, man, we need a grizzled film noir protagonist who is cynical but caring and and the audience will grow to love him. Is Humphrey available?
We need a movie that is loudly about shooting gangsters but quietly about grief and how nobody left World War II unscathed.
This is like the 4th movie in a row that like World War II hangs over. I swear to fucking God, if World War II is hanging over the next movie, I'm just like shutting down my podcast.
I mean, I quite literally wrote the note. I'm like, is this This is a gangster movie that is quietly about grief.
I mean, like, so one of the points that a YouTuber I quite like has made about horror movies is that the YouTuber is the Morbid Zoo, go watch her stuff, is that, like, saying a movie is about grief is kind of reductive because even the most brain dead, worthless horror film is still about watching people you love die. You know, the most tits and blood focused horror flick still forces characters to watch people they love die. So saying it's about grief, it's more about, like, much like a lot of really good movies about World War II, movies that are broadly speaking better than this one. It's about the feeling of coming back to America at the end of World War II and just, like, realizing kind of painfully, shit, man, the world is a lot worse than I thought it was. You know?
It's both shit, the world is a lot worse than I thought I was, and what is the stupid fucking what the fuck is the stupid John Oliver bit when he, like, tries to sell Mickey Mouse to Chuck E. Cheese? Where it's like, you're a part of the world's most imperialistic empire the world has ever seen. Your silence is complicity. That, but in the most, like, faux Mickey Mouse voice you've ever fucking heard in your life. That on steroids.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I mentioned this in the actual episode about Miracle on 34th Street, but Miracle on 34th Street is, at its core, it is a movie that World War II hangs over really heavily when you watch it as an adult. And the movie is fundamentally about the question, will we give in to cynicism or will we still believe the world can be good? And, like, I feel like that's what this movie is also aiming at. It is also asking, like, can this person who has, quite frankly, seen humanity at their absolute worst still believe the world can be good, even when then confronted with, once again, the worst of humanity? And I don't think that's, like, it's not very sophisticated about it. Like, having him take part in the Italian campaign and then be confronted with an evil Italian is I know writers use subtext and they're all cowards.
Yeah.
The bit of the film that I think best encapsulates that is when near the end, to circle back to the Seminole that were involved in the movie. Early in the film, we learned that the cops are looking for two brothers who broke out of jail on a 30-day stint, and after the mobsters, like, kill a cop and throw his body into a river, and shock of all shocks, the hurricane blows his body back into the road.
Mm-hmm.
The cop who we had seen was the other cop's partner, like, barges in and he's like, oh my god, who could have done such a thing? And the mobsters are like, well, we have these Indian people nearby. And he's like, got it. And he kills them on sight.
He does, and it's just like, on the one hand, later on he says, I'd rather be dead than have innocent blood on my hands. I'm saying, that is not my experience with cops.
Yeah, when the two brothers run to the corner and he started opening fire, I'm like, typical cop behavior. Hands up, don't shoot.
I don't actually expect. I'm not hopeful enough to think that most movies from the 1940s are going to be able to say a cab.
I mean, it's a kind. So I don't know if noirs are another one of the noirs are mostly a genre where ideally the cops are kind of useless because why else would you follow your PI?
Mm-hmm.
So we are saying a cab, but we're not saying a cab as bluntly as we will come to say a cab. We are saying a cab in the hey, look at how much of a doofus this guy is.
That is sort of like one of the things that shifted over from your classic noir like this. The cop is well-meaning but also kind of a dipshit, and that's honestly the case for both cops. The one who gets killed is the one who does grab the gun that Rocco uses to say, like, you can point the gun at me, but if you shoot me, I'll shoot you and we'll both die, which isn't loaded, of course. And, like, thinking he's gonna honor that is a dumb as shit thing to do, cop boy.
Yeah, but and you do get that, like, yes, that is because, like, he's a cop, but it's also because, like, he's very clearly, blatantly the youngest person in the room.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's sort of like, and I do think it is indicative, one of the things that's shifted over from noir to neo-noir, both set contemporaneously. I'm going to go with, and I'm sorry to have to reference this movie, Chinatown, or like, sci-fi noir like Blade Runner, is the cops are usually actively corrupt, if not abusive and horrible in neo-noir.
Another connection. John Huston is in Chinatown.
Yes, he is. Chinatown's on the list of movies where I'm like, man, I really wish bad people only made bad art.
Is that the one that is loudly about crime but quietly about LA's water system?
It is loudly about both. It is also unfortunately about incest.
I think I'd had to watch that movie for a class I was taking in LA about like the history of the city in terms of its like representation on film, and we had to watch like that, Blade Runner, and something else I forget. But like I didn't watch anything for that class because it was school and I didn't watch anything assigned to me. I just sort of faked it. Sorry, Ken. But my friends and I, a bunch of the friends that I made in that class, we got together about like a week or so ago, and I got to show my friend who was very not movie educated at all. Like sometimes we'll reference shit and she'll be like, the hell is that from? And it's like a very basic reference. And she's like, no, seriously, what's that from? And I'm like, Lillian, darling. To the point where we like have a list for her. And so I got to show her Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the first time, which is loudly about cartoons, but quietly about the destruction of LA's public transportation system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was going to be my joke. I said that if you want to imagine Chinatown, imagine Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but without the cartoons.
Yeah, Chinatown is kind of one of the Urtext examples of, no, bad people can make great art, because it is a fantastic movie. It's also directed by Roman Polanski.
Woof.
We'll get to him someday on here. He has too many Oscars to avoid him forever.
Unfortunately.
Yep. Or was I going with that? Oh, but like, I don't know. I have a lot of problems with that final scene, where the cop says like, "Oh, I'd rather die than have innocent blood on my hands," because like maybe this is just my like preference for movies with kind of like ambiguous endings. A lot of movies that I really love just kind of end on a smash to black in the middle of what seems like a scene. I could do without the entire wrap up scene. He could shoot Rocco, stumble injured to the boat wheel, tie it down so it goes the direction it needs to go, and you could cut to the end credits, and I would be happy.
I think the only reason I like the wrap up scene at all is because the mobster does call what Gay is gonna do, which is rat Ziggy out. That's kind of fun, giving her a little bit of agency at the end, because I want good things for women in this film and like in this genre in general, and they very rarely get good things happen to them.
I presume you've seen the Innuendo Studios video on how women in noir film can either have agency or identification.
Is that his one that's loudly about Blade Runner 2049?
Yes.
I think I saw it when I first got into him, but I haven't done a rewatch recently.
Okay. It's true. It's just straightforwardly true. It's not identification. It's agency or motivation. A femme fatale acts but does not. We don't know what she wants. Innocent woman who needs saving wants but does not act.
Yeah.
Those are the two major modes that women in film noirs are usually stuck in.
As referenced earlier, subtlety is for cowards. So the wrap up being George Bailey sitting there like, hey, perhaps we treat the Indians poorly. Perhaps they needed that in the 40s to be like, hey, remember these people that we, less than 100 years ago, like rounded up and forced into reservations and like ruined their country?
I make fun of writers who are like subtext is for cowards, but you know what? My favorite directors are the Wachowski sisters.
Rule of cool is a hell of a drug.
My favorite anime of the last couple of years is Witch from Mercury. The final scene of the first episode has the main character basically turn directly to the camera and go, "Wow, you don't have gay marriage where you're from? Your country must be backwards." So, like, subtlety is overrated sometimes. I don't mind it when the movie's just like, "Hey, here's what we're about. Shut up."
But yeah, like earlier when you have in service to the broader theme of Humphrey Bogart is just so fucking tired, like After he hears that the cop like murdered these two people in cold blood, you can just see like he just ages by like 10 years, and he's just so deflated, and he's like, yeah, I'm Frank McCloud. I come from nowhere. I'm going nowhere. Sure, I'll be here for a week. Fuck it.
Mm-hmm. I like that that's not like trivialized. It's it seems like it's such a low bar to jump over, but like, man, so many movies from the 40s were just like, oh yeah, Native Americans, you can just gun them down, it's fine. So like, low bar, but you cleared it. Fine.
Yeah.
Oof.
I do love Curly's little spiel when I meant to bring this up when you mentioned the scene where Rocco's just like talk about literally anything. I do love Curly's little spiel about how in 2 to 3 years they'll bring back Prohibition, which God I hope he's wrong. God I hope he's wrong. I know historically he's currently wrong, but like times being what they are.
Ah. Ah.
Ah!
Ah.
I do like how they play up the very like no honor among thieves thing, because when his evil gangster friend Ziggy shows up, he's very chummy, and then near the end, like one of his toadies is kind of like, yeah, but like, isn't Gay gonna fuck him over? And he's like, yeah, she's gonna fuck him over. Like that's the point. But like when the same toady earlier was like, yeah, in 3 years they're gonna bring back prohibition. Rocco was just kind of like, that is the most stupid fucking thing I've heard in my life. And then when Ziggy says it, it's just kind of like, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, one of the things that struck me about that is like, you're right. He's backstabbing this guy already, and like one of the things they say is, "Oh yeah, they're going to bring back prohibition, but this time all the gangsters going to be on the same side. No backstabbing each other." He says as they backstab each other.
Yeah, like as he's currently plunging the knife in.
I don't remember when I first said this. I think I probably said it about people who are like Christian nationalists is the one I first said it about. Like, there's a certain variety of person who is like, oh yeah, the rules should just be like whoever's the strongest is in charge. You're the winner. You get to decide what the culture is. I'm like, yeah, because you're assuming in your brain that you're always going to be the winner. And like, yeah, of course you're just like, oh yeah, it's totally fine that we're gonna backstab each other. Because you assume that you're always gonna come out on top, dipshit. Gotta start planning for when you lose.
Yeah.
Though I don't think that's really Rocco's speed.
No, it is not.
Well, we got a lot of talk out of this movie. I've been sitting here talking about how lightweight it is, and then I waxed philosophic about its World War II connection for too long, and none of you shut me up.
No, I did, like literally because like I have 3 different lines in this movie that made me like perk up and go, yeah, this is the ethos of the post World War II cinema, which is the I had hopes once, but I gave them up. Better to be a live coward than a dead hero, and a cause isn't lost so long as someone's still fighting. 2 of those lines delivered by the women of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one about, the one that it pops up, I think, immediately on the IMDb trivia page, which is like, when your head says one thing, your heart says another, and your heart's been saying the same thing its whole life or something like that. Hang on. I'm going to pull up IMDb because if I don't find the exact quote, I'll kill myself.
Avoid doing it's bad for you.
Yeah, don't kill yourself. I'm rather fond of you.
Fine, I'm going to put on the best damn dance show this community center has ever seen.
I'm going to commit Sudoku. I'm going to do a Sudoku puzzle.
When your head says one thing and your whole life says another, your head always loses.
I mean, like, it's not really going to be a surprise to anyone if I say that, like, for all of the rest of the 40s and honestly a solid chunk of the 50s, World War II just hangs over the Oscars. It's basic. It hung over culture for over a decade after World War II ended, because I don't know, man, it was a big deal. I don't know how to explain to people that World War II was a big deal.
Yeah, it is sort of this like I don't remember which history textbook or not like history textbook, but which history book I was reading. I'm looking at my shelf and I'm trying to figure out which one it was. I think it's probably Polyphonic Century of Song, if I'm being honest, because I think that's the only one that A goes back that far and B has the honesty to say this. But the post-war culture was basically trying to re-reckon with the national identity, because we came out of World War II with two things. Number one, we'd technically won. Number two, we created a weapon that can destroy everyone and everything at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed we were not afraid to use it. And so these two competing ideas, and oh, by the way, the civil rights movement is finally bubbling to a point where we cannot fucking ignore it anymore, because people are about to get very, very loud because, hey, the army might have tried to integrate a little bit and we were coming back, and hey, vet rights, man, everything comes to a head. And so it's this sense of like the American identity. Actually, might have been Crash Course. Who am I kidding? I was rewatching American Crash Course the other day. But the idea of coming out of World War II, having to reconcile the American identity of, truth, justice, and the American way versus, like, what we actually stand for and what we actually did and what we will do going forward. And the idea of the 50s trying to be, like, the suburban sanitization, and then a lot of people on the fringes of that suburban sanitization going, hey, motherfucker, no.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is like sort of the thing we're getting to now. They're trying to suburban sanitize us again, and we are even louder going, hey, motherfucker, no.
I mean, you could make the argument, if World War II, if the response to World War II was the invention and sanctification of the nuclear family, which I've said this elsewhere. I'm going to say it here so I can have my opinion on the record here, so that none of you listeners ever forget who you're listening to. The nuclear family was the default mode of human arrangement for one socioeconomic class in one race in one country for, like, I want to say, like, 20 years at the absolute most. It is not the natural state of humanity. Shut the fuck up. Then like, you could argue, like, I was going to say that you could argue that any movie about the soul crushing nature of the suburbs is in way influenced by World War II. But honestly, I don't even have to go that metaphorical. The last time it is like 2 weeks after the most recent Oscars, after the 97th Academy Awards, and the most recent Academy Awards to have an Oscar-winning movie about World War II is the 97th. And the most recent one to have it win Best Picture is the 96th. Like, we are still obsessed with World War II in this country. I kind of feel like we always will be at a certain point.
Well, it's the last time that we had, until they decide it's not, I guess, but it's the last time we had clear-cut good guys and bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they tried to do it for a bit with Korea, but then everyone forgot Korea happened because Vietnam happened, but then Vietnam was a whole fucking mess.
Vietnam was a whole fucking mess. The only reason I don't forget Korea didn't happen is because I'm too much of a MASH obsessive.
Someday we'll roll up MASH.
As everyone and their mother will tell you about me specifically, it is my grandfather trait. Stance of this podcast, fuck Nazis.
Fuck Nazis. That should not surprise. You know what? I am sitting here, a bisexual transgender woman dating a Jewish man and a Trinidadian woman. Fuck Nazis, and they'll fuck me up because they do not like me at all.
As the enemy bisexual, fuck Nazis. All my homies hate Nazis. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. Yeah, man.
I guess as a wrap-up on the subject of Nazis being, ontologically evil,
sure.
The actor who played Rocco, Edward G. Robinson, he was notable for his time as being very fervently anti-fascist, and he was such anti-fascist, in fact, that he was brought up on charges on the
House Un-American Activities Committee?
Yes, and he was gray-listed.
Good.
Based of him... whenever someone tells me that America is an extremely left-wing country, I sit there going like, hey man, we had the House hunting down people for being communist.
And they found no one.
And we let the Nazis have a rally at Madison Square Garden.
Have a rally in Madison Square Garden. They won the election.
Yeah.
Twice.
You know what? On that extremely good note, Justin, 10 out of 10 joke there. Not even joke, 10 out of 10 comment there, Justin. River, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I do. I am the host of a podcast called The Straights Aren't All Right, a podcast where I gather a bunch of queers together, make them watch straight rom-coms, try to answer the question, are the straights, like, okay? Our current episode out as of time of this recording is Princess and the Frog, but by the time you actually listen to this, our next episode is Only You, the movie starring Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. that made a bunch of people make jokes about Aunt May and Tony Stark romancing each other in Italy when Marissa Tomei got cast as Aunt May in the MCU. You can also find me on Blue Sky at Dreams Rebel, and you can find me on my own blog at blog.filmland.online, where I am doing the great MCU rewatch and talking about television.
I'm sure I know the answer to this, but your answers are always extremely good. Justin, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
My plug for this week would be a plug you would use to stop a boat from sinking. Not unlike the plug you probably used by that captain the mobsters paid off who left when the hurricane happened because he's not a fucking moron.
That dude was great. And I love how he just like leaves and they basically say like, no, he's not coming back. Why? Because they threatened to kill him if he left, which was in retrospect a dumbass thing to do, Rocco.
Truly.
As always, you can find me, Ellie, on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos with dashes between the words. You can find me on Blue Sky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42. And you can find this podcast on Blue Sky at Biggest Night Pod. We are available on both Spotify and YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe, maybe like and comment on the videos so that you can tell me which parts you like and which parts you don't.
And that's it for our episode on Key Largo. I'm sorry it wasn't actually lighter than our previous couple of episodes. You know what? For our next episode, I'm certain we're finally going to get things to lighten up around here a little bit, because our next episode, we are covering Toy Story 4, first animated movie we've covered on here. I hope to see you there.
Isn't that the movie where we had to contend with the fact that a trilogy had overstayed its welcome, and you have to contend with the Pixar Disney monstrosity beast? How is that going to be lighter, Ellie?
Look, my previous episode before this one was about anti-Semitism. We are grading on a curve, River. On a curve.
Well, now I need to think of how World War II hangs over Toy Story. I mean, the first
Okay,
one
thank
does
you
have army men.
Thank you for coming on, everyone. We're hanging up now.